Good morning. Today indeed is the 29th day of November, 2021. Not like I said yesterday. This is the Good Life Meditation, my daily remembrance, recitation, and thinking over of my personal objectives and principles. These are the objectives and principles covered in my book, Going Alone, and then further elaborated in in the sequel, The Good Life. I call this the good life in homage to the Stoic tradition of principles and objectives that they use to attempt to achieve their own good life. Let's do it. So, first of all, there are 7 objectives. The first of these is the objective, hey Ollie, to be always ready to die, to have my affairs in order, my finances, my relationships, and my art in a state that if I die today, I'm ready to go. Number 2 is to make good and effective use of time, to not waste time or let my life slip away without doing a good job of living the best job I can. Number 3 is the development and maintenance of good and sound life principles. That's exactly these principles and objectives that I'm talking about here. To work throughout my life to collect these as I encounter them. Some of these are borrowed, some of them may be stolen, some of them are indeed my own. And to tend to them, to curate them throughout the course of my life, so that they're not just stagnant, rules chiseled in stone, but they're well worked for, maintained, and held for good reason. The next objective is to cultivate good emotional reactions, to try to react well to the circumstances throughout the day. And at the end of the meditation, I typically think about the coming day and remind myself of forecast, but kind of like a weather forecast, but an emotional reaction forecast. Forecast the things that might get in the way of my balance and equanimity, and that I can be ready for them. So I'll do that at the end. The next objective is to simply do good things. That's really easy, right? We kind of have a good idea about what constitutes good things, especially if we've got principles and objectives that we can refer to. Next is to always remember my true limits and my true opportunities. What are the things that are kind of outside my reach? What are the things that I possibly that I can do? And try to balance my life accordingly, kind of keep within the lane line, so to speak, within reason. Some off-roading is allowed. Next is to do one thing at a time and do it slowly, to try to avoid multitasking whenever possible. Let me take a sip between objectives and principles. So those were my 7 objectives. Now my principles. Principle number 1 is the principle of war. To always be at war with everything that I hold true and everything that you or anyone else claims is true. If you tell me it's true, I'm going to ask you, interesting. Well, first of all, if you tell me it's true and it's a mundane truth, like you like waffles with honey rather than syrup, I'll accept I'll accept you for that, and I won't question that. But if you tell me that there's an almighty, omnipotent being living somewhere in the universe that is watching over us and has a plan for us and will punish us if we don't if I don't listen to you and heed that being's proclamations. Well, that's going to require you to show me your work if you want me to take you seriously. I don't mind not taking you seriously. And likewise, I would expect the same from others, right? If I make such a claim, then I would hope that they would hold me to task. Next is the principle of reason. That's the tool that I use in the prosecution of that war. And there are 3 sub-principles: honesty, objectivity, and doubt. Next is the principle of the homunculus, the little mortal who lives inside my head and will die with me, and yours will die with you, apparently, when we're dead. No hope of escape, no escape hatch out the ear, no invisible, whisking away, or at least no one's been able to demonstrate anything like that can happen. It does appear that when we die, our consciousness dies with us as well and is gone forever. Yeah, no coming back. So that's simply, the homunculus reminds me of that fact, that apparently we have no soul, there apparently is no afterlife. If you can show otherwise, then bring it on. I would love to know. I would love to know better. I would love to stick around. Life's fun. I wonder what the afterlife would be like. Would that be fun? Well, apparently it's paradise. So they say. The next is the Anchorhold. The Anchorhold is simply the place where the homunculus resides. I think of a little rock sticking out of the sea that you're sitting on, you and I on our own individual little rock. The tide comes up. Those are the difficult times. The tide goes down. Those are the easy times because the waves are further down. Sometimes the sea is rough. Sometimes the wind blows. Sometimes waves can threaten to wash us off. That's the Anchorhold. Basically this environment and this thing that we can't get off of. There's no real escape. You can't really get off. You've got to weather the storm. We all do. Until the storm is no more, or at least until we are no more. The storm goes on. After the Anchorhold comes the home of good and evil. The home of good and evil is the catalog of right and wrong that we maintain within our head, checking that the audio is working. Sometimes I forget to turn that on. Making sure that that it's working. I mean, making sure home of good and evil is our list. It's these principles and objectives, but I like to imagine them written in chalk. If you've watched my videos in the desert where I go out and I write these principles in chalk under the bridge, imagine the same thing, but inside the carapace of your skull. A little homunculus up there writing the principle of nature, right? And it's got to be in chalk because it can be erased away if it's wrong, or wind, and the wind will blow it away, suggesting that as we age and die, our grasp and our hold on these things is tenuous at best. Next is the principle of purpose. There are 3 purpose in my life. The first one is biology. It simply means not life science, but simply means having children. There's mine, and she's grown. She still needs my care, but for the most part, I've fulfilled that particular mandate. I've also got the dog there, and he's sitting right here. I'm petting him right now. Biology is an important one. It fulfills some inner mandate of nature. Which we wouldn't be here if we didn't have that mandate. So it's a good one. It seems to be the only objective purpose that I can find. Beyond that, I have 2 purpose that I try to follow my own, which are virtue, to try to live a virtuous life, whereas virtue is defined as the objective improvement of well-being for thinking creatures for the most part. And then the third one is whatever mission I want to have in life. My mission is writing these books and making these videos to share the good life objectives and principles with anyone that might be interested, because they really help. It's helped me a lot. So if I do say so myself. The next principle is the principle of the atomic principle. Everything is made of atoms and molecules, compounds, etc. And when we die, we will decompose, be burned up, whatever the case may be, and our atoms will dissipate out and be reused by something else. Likewise, it's been going on before us, and so it will go on after us, right? Atomic principle just reminds me that I'm just stardust, so to speak. Nod to Carl Sagan. Next principle is the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, and it's good to recognize what that nature is so that we understand what we're getting ourselves into and what we're dealing with. I always like to pull out of the air something or some concept or some activity or someone and ask myself about their nature. The someone I won't talk about here because that involves other people, but it's helpful to remember the nature of some ones that I have in my life, because it helps me to be ready to interact with them according to their nature. But for today, I always like to pick out something from the ether every day and think about the nature. Let's talk about first days on the job. I will have my first day on my new job in 3 days. It's the nature of first days on the job to be rather anxiety-ridden, exciting and interesting, but rather anxiety-ridden as well, because we are putting ourselves into a new environment with new people, perhaps, and new expectations. I am very anxious about my new job that I'm going to start in 3 days, and I want to do well. Of course, it's imperative that I do well to provide for my family, so I take this very seriously. So I'm preparing for that. I have an idea about what they're going to need me to do. I'm studying that. I'm making sure I have the right clothes that fit. I'll actually be showing up in person for the first day of work. I'll be working from home otherwise in my little office here, but I'll be showing up in person, and I'll be ready to report for duty. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be anxious. I'm already quite anxious. That's the principle of nature. The next principle is the pirate ride. Imagine robots, with no free will. I think that you and I are basically the same. This apparent animation of our life, this willful animation, I think is an illusion. I don't think we have free will. We can make any choice we want, but the choices that we make are the only ones that we really could have made. I'm not a fatalist. I don't believe that there's a particular course laid out, but I believe that the energetic propulsion from the past, like I say, the domino falls from the past, pretty much make it inevitable about which way we're headed. I think there's very little decision in our decisions, and we are in a sense like those robots at the Pirates of the Caribbean in ride at Disneyland. Our matey. That's why I call it the pirate ride. Now today I'm not going to miss one. I missed one yesterday, but see if I make the apathy. I'll catch it when I get there. Oh, yeah. I think I'm well prepared to do that. The next principle is the principle of maturity, which consists of two sub-principles: wisdom and fortitude. Maturity arrives when we have some experience in life, and we remember the mistakes and the successes, and then we have the strength and will the fortitude to not do those again. That's maturity. The next principle is the social principle. We are social animals. We need one another to survive, and our best ends are social ends. I am not a very social person. I prefer my solitude for the most part, but I know that my biological mandate my biology is mandated to be that family gives you something. So, and I want to enjoy that something, and I also want to help facilitate the enjoyment of that something in others. So I am a family man. I am not a hermit on a mountain, although despite the title of my book. The social principle. It is a very good thing to be a creature of others. I think we kind of go down a scary path otherwise. Oh, hi, Ollie. Resting. The next principle is the principle of public speaking. That's simply a reminder for me to use few words, carefully chosen words, and deliberate words, and words that other people understand. I enjoy vocabulary. I read books from the past, and they use a lot of antique words. I want to know those words, but I don't want to use them in undue circumstance, or certainly not in a way that makes other people uncomfortable or not be able to understand my meaning. So I reserve those words for my reading so I can understand when I encounter them in the future. But I don't necessarily, I use words that people understand. And I try to use the right words and have an economy of speech. That's the first part of the principle of public speaking. The other part is to try to avoid gossip. I do that by always imagining that if I'm talking about someone, like for example, if I'm talking about my daughter Emily up there, I want to make sure I want to remind myself that as if Emily was sitting there with me and overhearing the conversation. That way, I'm not going to say anything that I would regret saying in front of her, right? And I can avoid gossip. Good thing to avoid gossip, indeed. I should make that a sin. I think that's the second time I've suggested that to myself. The next principle is the principle of temperance. Temperance is the controlled consumption of all things, namely, also our emotions, right? Controlling our thoughts, our emotions, our work, our play, all things. And there are three sub-principles: suffering, simplicity, and apathy. There's apathy. Suffering, because we suffer when we deny ourselves what we want. Simplicity, because a simple life is a temperate life. And apathy, because apathy is the recognition of what is outside of our control and our giving that up. I sometimes wear a shirt that says, I have all of my goods with me, which is a famous quote or maybe not such a famous quote, from the Stoic Stilbo, referring to everything that all of his goods consist of his ability of self-control, of fortitude, and of internal management. All the rest of this is irrelevant for the most part. From the Stoics' perspective, even family, children, friends, etc. I don't know if I can go that far. So that's temperance, controlled consumption. After temperance comes the Feast of Offal. The Feast of Offal is this banquet that we have of emotions, especially negative emotions, when we get upset and spew out our bile, mental bile into the world. You get to work and you can't remember the password for your computer and it locks on you. It's like, God damn, and your cube mate next to you is like, well, what is it, and you're like, friggin' computer here, it's locked out again. Well, yeah, well, maybe call someone from IT. Gee, that guy needs to chill. And now you're kind of, the next cube mate is kind of upset. You see, he consumed that feast of upset. And then now he's kind of upset. He goes to the break room and he can't, he finds that someone left the Keurig cup thing in the thing, and it's gross, right? He opens it up. Ah, crap! Someone left his Keurig cup. God dang it! Who's always doing this? Maybe he wouldn't have lost it if he hadn't been triggered, so to speak, from the other guy. And now he's done, and then the woman in the break room's like, "Gee, calm down," or whatever, And see how it cascades, and she consumes it, and it goes on and on and on. I try to avoid this banquet by first controlling my emotions, having good emotional reactions, and two, tempering my emotions even when they do rise. Remember the Anchorhold, the place where I'm sitting when the waters rise and they threaten to wash me off, I instead of railing against the heavens, I simply kind of cross my legs and, figuratively in my head, sit in peaceful contemplation instead. It works. It really does work. Okay, after the Feast of Offal comes the principle of distraction. We work hard all of our lives to distract ourselves from everything. No, we distract ourselves with everything to see nothing, the great indifference that I call it. That's the next principle, which is agency in the great indifference. So I've got two principles here working in concert, right? Distraction is what we do: work, play, sex, food, whatever TV, whatever card games, hobbies, motorcycles, anything at all, just so that you don't have to realize or recognize that the universe is mostly empty, apparently a yawning, screaming void without any hint of oversight, no God apparently, and we don't want to see that, because if we have to see that, then we have to realize that we are mortal, that we are frail and failing, and that death is imminent, so imminent even for the young, and there is no hereafter. So we don't want to see that. So la, I'll just focus on my hobbies, on my needlecraft, or my video games, or whatever the case may be. So that's agency in the great. That's just principle of distraction and the principle of agency in the great indifference. The next principle is the principle of the best seat in the house. It's a simple one. It's simply a reminder to myself every day that where I am, what I am doing, and who I am is fine. I'm going to accept that. That's the best seat in the house, which is the house being life, right? Another sip of my coffee. Okay, the next principle is the principle of the Path of Wildness. The Path of Wildness is simply a measured, deliberate decision to move forward through life when the going gets rough, when we have to make a choice, right or left, up or down, A or B, or whatever the case may be, him or her, her, him, I don't know. Whatever the case may be, we weigh the facts, we give ourselves some time to deliberate, and then sometimes what happens is we're not ready to make a decision, so we wait and we weigh the facts more. We wait. In some cases, it's so extreme that the opportunity passes us by. The path of wildness is a deliberate decision at the point when we've collected enough facts, we've given ourselves enough time to think about it, and it's time to make a choice. What I suggest is, if you can't make a choice, then lean in the direction of your first inclination. Where was your first gut instinct tell you to go, or do, or say, or be? Then do that. And there's no guarantee that that's going to be the right way, but at least there's the benefit of forward motion. There's the benefit of making the choice and of moving forward, and that's a good thing in its own right, even if we fail. So the path of wildness, it's easy to find. The course of a stream, leaves blown in the wind, a beast's track through the brush, and the direction of our first inclination. The next principle is the principle of the risk of avoiding risk. There are two layers of risks in life. The surface level risks, the ones that we can more easily attend to, those consist of education, job, spouse, home, saving for retirement, etc., right? And this is the stuff our parents caution us to make sure that we do. Some of us do this to the point that we do it so well that that's all we do. And we don't focus on a deeper risk, which is the risk of not, if you're so inclined. Some of us aren't. If you're so inclined as to have some art in life, something that you want to become or actualize, or some mission in life, of not doing that. But the danger is, the reason it's a risk is if we focus on these surface level risks to the extent that we get to senior citizen age, retirement, etc., and we may now have time, but no longer any inclination, energy, and we're too afraid of the world to do any of this, right? We have been molded by the circumstances of our lives into an old man or an old woman who can only barely faintly remember the dreams of our youth. And are certainly probably not going to, or we're certainly not going to be able to actualize them the way we could have in our 20s or 30s. If we do it at our best then, it's going to be in a crippled form. So later in life, it's a real risk. You can miss this. You can completely let this go, and you're left older in life, and with a safe and comfortable and living environment, maybe lots of free time, but darn it, we missed something along the way. That's a scary thing. The opposite is that you focus on the deep level. This is what the hippies did. They said, well, screw all that. There's just the deep stuff. And then they had a kind of a rich and fulfilling adventure trying to finding themselves. And maybe had made some good discoveries along the way, but then missed out on all of this. Which is the more important one? I'm not really sure. It would be great if you could balance these in some way. I would suggest, and I do suggest to my daughter, that she gives herself the decade of her 20s to work on the deep one, right? That's when you're in a better position to weather failure and still get back on your feet. You're also young and stupid and naive, and that's when the best mistakes happen, right? That's the ones that we learn from the most, that help us to gain a real deep maturity later in life. And then after age 30, begin working on these. Sure, you'll be behind your peers, maybe 5, 6 years, 7 years, those that went right out of college straight into their career. So by the time you're midlife, you're maybe a supervisor at work, and they're a manager. And then when you retire, you're a manager, and they're an executive, right? So I mean, there's that, right? But who's going to be have the more interesting talks at the cocktail party? I don't know. I think there's a better balance if you do the two, if you try to do the two. I spent a long time on that one. So that's the Path of Wildness. Again, it's easy to find. No, that was the one before. This is the risk of avoiding risk. Next one is sin and damnation. Okay, in my worldview, although I don't believe in God, I don't believe that there's any gods to sin against, I do believe that you can sin against a good life by not abiding your own principles. And in my worldview, there are 6 sins. These are hope. Some of these might sound like a surprise, like really, that's a sin? Yeah, hope. I consider hope a sin. Hope, credulity, willingness to believe too easily. Faith, yes, faith is a sin. Superstition, dogma, and authority. Hope kind of is a surprise. Hope is a sin because it's like I like to say, it's an impotent virtue, or it's an impotent quality that pretends to be a virtue, right? It's really, hope is nothing more than wishful thinking, right? There's no energy or active action associated with that. So I would rather substitute hope for hope. I would substitute planning for the hope. Have a plan, build a plan, and act on it. And then faith is a sin because faith is the evidence of the things unseen, which means that it's just wishful thinking. It's just saying, I haven't got a good reason to believe, and I'm just going to believe anyway. What? How in the world did that ever become a virtue? My goodness. I know why, because it gives people a reason to hold on to ideas that are rewarding to themselves in the society that they live in, And it's the only way they can do this. Well, they're selling out their reason, of course, but I guess it's the only way they can do it and have any mental integrity. Because if they've been raised or tricked themselves into thinking that faith is a virtue, which it certainly is not. Okay, so that's the sin and damnation. Next is I did the risk of avoiding risk, sin and damnation. Oh, the great life adventure. The great life adventure is one or more marquee events in life that become the centerpiece of our life that we center our identity on. Remember, I was talking before about using the decade of the 20s to do that? There you go. If you do that, if you use your decade of your 20s to do that, you have a couple, one or two great life adventures. Now you've got a nucleus for your identity, your own personal identity going forward, and to whatever man or woman you become. After the great life adventure comes the season of philosophy. This principle suggests that there may be a time in your life when, especially if you have a great life adventure, especially if you pursue that deep level risk, you might start to have some ideas. And you might want to write them down or paint them out or take a photo or make a song or whatever the case may be. But this will be your art. This will be the thing that you can leave on your shelf when you're done. I still haven't done that yet, but I mean to create a shelf for myself over here that I can show. I should probably do that with the second one here. The shelf of this is the stuff that I've made in life. And that's the season of philosophy, is the time to do that. But watch out, waiting too long to write those things down, and the words may pass and be gone. The muse has a fickle way of whispering in our ear, and then just zipping away, and you can't remember. You better write it down when the voice speaks, so to speak. That's the season of philosophy. Next is the bullseye aim, trying to hit the mark. Usually we don't. Next is the arena and utility. Life is an arena for the living and the development of principles and objectives and the refinement of those. And then once we have them, they hang like utilities, like tools on a tool belt. That's the utility part. And we can pull out a little apathy here and there. We can whip out a little temperance. We can, like, here comes some reason, right? And we can use those as tools to get through the day. The very last one is the idea that nothing is enough, that sometimes less is better. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop. Thank you for spending 27, almost 28 minutes this morning on the Good Life Meditation. Take care. Make it a good day. And remember, be safe, but not too safe. Bye-bye.